Forest is a large geographical area with thick growth of trees inhabited by a wide range of animals and microorganisms. The very thought of forest arouses an image of thick, dense vegetation with different species of animals inhabiting in this area. This large diversity of microorganisms, plants, and animals present on our planet is known as biological diversity or biodiversity. However, this assorted biodiversity on our planet is under threat, and one of the major reasons is deforestation. There are several causes and drastic consequences of deforestation. However, whatever may be the cause of deforestation, the eventual consequence could be very high to all the species present on our planet, including us. Hence, the conservation of our natural resources should be our top priority. So now we'll start understanding with deforestation and its causes and consequences. So a great variety of plants and animals exist on earth which are essential for the well-being and survival of the mankind. So the part of the earth which supports life is called biosphere. Today, a major threat to the survival of these organisms is deforestation. Deforestation can be defined as the clearing of trees of a forest and using that land for some other purposes. So the cause of deforestation can be of two categories, that is natural causes or the man-made or anthropogenic causes. So the natural causes of deforestation include, the first one is forest fire. So a forest fire is an uncontrolled fire which will damage a forested area and can be great danger to wildlife and people living in that forest. So forest fires will damage large regions of the forest. At times, the entire flora and fauna of that forest will be turned into ashes. The next natural cause is drought. So drought for a long period will make the place dry, due to which the area will become prone to forest fire, which could eventually lead to deforestation. So drought makes the place dry. Now we'll move on to the man-made causes. So the first one is procuring land for cultivation purposes. The second cause is building houses and factories on forest land. And third cause is making furniture or using wood as fuel are some of the man-made causes of deforestation. Now we will move on to the consequences of deforestation. So the first consequence is global warming. So we all know that CO2 is required by plants for their photosynthesis. So fewer trees. So if deforestation will happen, there will be less trees. So less CO2 will be utilized by the plants, due to which the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere will be increased. So we know that CO2 has an ability to trap heat, that is the infrared radiations reflected by the earth. So with the increase in CO2 levels, the temperature on the earth will also increase, which results in global warming. The next consequence is the change in water cycle. That is, plants contribute to the water cycle through transpiration, that is, the loss of water through stomata, and they regulate the water cycle and are responsible for bringing rainfall on earth. So deforestation could lead to the imbalance of the normal water cycle, which could result in reduced rainfall. So this results in drought. Next consequence of deforestation is a change in the properties of the soil. That is, forests are responsible for providing humus and organic nutrients to the soil, which increases the fertility of the soil. Deforestation will change the pH, moisture content, nutrient content, and the texture of the soil, and hence the fertility is compromised. Next consequence is soil erosion. That is, the roots of plants and animals help to hold the soil particles together. Deforestation enhances the erosion of the top fertile soil. So removal of this top soil will expose the lower or the hard and rocky layers of the soil. Exposed layers of the soil have less humus and are less fertile. So gradually the fertile land will get converted into the desert. So this process is called as the desertification. So the process of conversion of fertile land into a So the next consequence is lowering of groundwater level. That is, deforestation decreases the water holding capacity of the soil. So vegetation cover prevents the surface water runoff and increases the percolation of water into the deep layers of soil. So this water collects and forms the groundwater. But deforestation reduces the movement of the water from the surface into the water, which is called infiltration. That is, the movement of water from surface into the soil is called infiltration, and hence it reduces the ground water level. Next consequence is increased chances of natural calamities. That is, due to deforestation, chances of flood and drought also increase as the infiltration rate of water from the surface into the soil is reduced. So such natural calamities further damage the existing flora and fauna over a large area. The next consequence is shortage of forest products. That is, the people who depend on forest for their basic necessities will face shortage of products like wood, honey, gum, fruits, and vegetables. So if deforestation will happen, then these people will find it hard to gather these products from the forest. Next consequence is extinction of many wild animals and plants. That is, many wild animals and plants are found in forests. So deforestation causes the imbalance of the natural habitat of these organisms. So wild animals may starve to death, or in the absence of plants may even become extinct. So due to deforestation, there will be an imbalance of the natural habitat of these organisms. So it is hard for them to continue their survival. So next, with this, we have completed the causes and consequences of deforestation. Now, we'll study about forest and wildlife. So, when we hear the term wildlife, it will generally refer to large, ferocious animals living in the forests, such as tigers, lions, elephants, wolves, etc. But in fact, wildlife implies to any living organism which is living in its natural habitat, which includes all the plants, animals, microorganisms, except the cultivated plants and domesticated animals. I repeat, wildlife implies to any living organism living in its natural habitat, which includes all the plants, animals, and microorganisms, except the plants which are cultivated or domesticated animals. So the plants are known as flora and animals are known as fauna. Now we'll understand what is a biosphere. So a part of earth in which living organisms exist or which supports life is called biosphere. Biological diversity or biodiversity, that is, it refers to the variety of organisms existing on earth, either their interrelationships and their relationship with the environment. So biodiversity will involve various organisms which are living on earth and they have interrelationships or they have a relationship with earth or the environment which they are living. So important forest products. So forest is a large biotic communities. Forests are large biotic communities and they provide food and shelter to large number of diverse species of plants, animals and microorganisms. So forests are of immense importance for life and prosperity of human beings and nations. Forests provide a rich variety of goods useful to both the affluent industrial societies and rural poor. So for example, wood is a major forest produce. So it is a raw material for making paper or rayon, and in developing countries the heaviest demand on forests is for fuel wood. Now next, it is important to note that India is the sixth on the list of 12 mega diversity countries in the world. Our place is sixth, and India has more than half of the world's wild tigers. So India has more than half of the world's wild tigers, and 65% of the ancient elephants and 85% of great one-horned rhinoceros and 100% of Asian lions. Next, we'll understand about the conservation of wildlife. That is one of the most important factors that threatens wildlife today is habitat destruction, that is loss of natural habitat due to encroachment. So in order to protect and conserve the flora and fauna and their habitats, several kinds of protected areas have been set up. Several kinds of protected areas have been set up. So these protected areas allow varied levels of interference from outside so as to bring about the conservation of wildlife and other organisms or resources of forests. In India, ecologically unique and biodiversity rich regions are legally protected. The first one is National Park, and then the Wildlife Sanctuary and Biosphere Reserves. So first we'll study about national parks. So national parks are the areas which are reserved for wildlife, where they can freely use the habitat and the natural resources. So national parks are diverse and large enough to protect the whole set of ecosystem. So they preserve the flora and fauna and landscape of an area. So this area is strictly restricted for the welfare of wildlife. Grazing, cultivation, private ownership rights and habitat manipulations are not allowed. So what are not allowed in a national park? That is grazing, cultivation and private ownership and habitat manipulations are not allowed in national parks. Now we'll understand about one such national park, that is Satpura National Park. So Satpura National Park is the first reserve forest of India, and it is located in Hosangabad, that is in Madhya Pradesh, and it covers an area of 524 square kilometers. And Satpura, being a part of unique ecosystem, is very rich in biodiversity, and it has the finest Indian teak wood is there in this forest, that is the finest teak wood. And the rich fauna of this national park will include tiger, leopard, cheetal and many more. And the rich flora will include sal, teak, bale, bamboo, etc. And earlier animals like lions, elephants and wild buffaloes were also found, but their number has reduced slowly. And the Satpura Tiger Reserve is also situated in the Satpura National Park. And Project Tiger was launched by government in Satpura to protect the tigers of the country. The objective of this project is to ensure the survival and maintenance of the tiger population in the country, which is slowly decreasing. The Satpura Tiger Reserve is unique in sense that a significant number in the population of tigers has been seen here after the enforcement of Project Tiger. In Satpura National Park, shallow cave-like openings are present, which are called the rock shelters. And these are the important archaeological evidences of the prehistoric human life. They give us an idea of the life of the primitive people, and the rock paintings that are of the prehistoric times will depict the figures of animals, tools for hunting, fighting, musical instruments, etc. are also found in these shelters. A total of 55 rock shelters have been identified in the Mahi Biosphere Reserve. So with this we have completed the national parks. Now we will move on to the wildlife sanctuaries. So a wildlife sanctuary is a space set aside exclusively for the conservation of wild animals. So the sanctuaries provide protection and suitable living conditions to the wild animals. The animals are protected in their natural habitats, and killing or capturing of animals is strictly prohibited in these areas. Operations such as the collection of minor forest products and private ownership rights are allowed as long as the fauna is not being adversely affected. Some of the threatened wild animals like black buck, white-eyed buck, elephant, golden cat, etc. are preserved in the wildlife sanctuaries. Now we'll understand the difference between a zoo and a wildlife sanctuary. So for zoo, so the places where the animals are kept in protected environment under the human care. So in zoo we find human care outside their natural habitat is known as a zoological park or a zoo. Whereas the wildlife sanctuary is a place which is set aside exclusively for the conservation of wild animals in their natural habitats. So in the zoo we don't find a natural habitat, but in wildlife sanctuary there is a natural habitat. And in zoo the animals are protected outside their natural habitats, but the conditions provided to them are mostly similar to their natural habitat. But in the wildlife sanctuaries the animals are protected in their natural habitats. And operations such as harvesting of and the collection of minor forest products and private ownership rights are not permitted. But in the wildlife sanctuaries, these are permitted as long as they do not interfere with the well-being of the animals. Next point is, in the zoos, the animals are kept in cages, while in the wildlife sanctuaries, animals are not kept in cages and they are free in their natural habitats. With this, we have completed the wildlife sanctuaries. Now, we'll move on to the biosphere reserves. So, the biosphere reserve is a large area of protected land which is meant for the conservation of biological diversity, and it helps to maintain the biodiversity as well as the traditional life of the tribals living in that area. So the concept of biosphere reserve was formulated by Man and Biosphere MAB program of UNESCO, that is United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. So a biosphere reserve may also contain other protected areas. For example, the biosphere reserve is a biosphere reserve which consists of one national park, which is the Satpura National Park, and two wildlife sanctuaries, that is Bori and Pachmarhi Wildlife Sanctuary. They preserve flora, fauna, landscape and historic objects of an area. Flora and fauna of this bioreserve are similar to those of the upper Himalayan peaks and those belonging to the lower western Ghats. So biodiversity found here is unique. Sail, teak, mango, jamun, arjun, etc. are some of the flora, and wild dog, wolf are some of the fauna found in this biosphere reserve. So the plants and animals which are found exclusively in a particular area or a particular geographical region are called the endemic species. So they are restricted to a particular habitat, and hence the damage of this habitat will, or the increasing population, introduction of new species may affect the natural habitat of this endemic species and endanger their existence. So for example, sal and wild mango are the endemic flora, and bison, Indian grey squirrel and flying squirrel are the endemic fauna at this biosphere reserve, and they are not found anywhere else. Now we'll start with the rare species classification by IUCN. IUCN stands for International Union for Conservation of Nature. It is also called World Conservation Union, that is WCU. It has a mission to influence, encourage, assist, and guide the world to conserve the integrity and diversity of nature. Rare species of plants and animals can be classified into different categories. So the first criteria or the category is extinct species. That is, a species is said to be extinct when even the last individual of the species is not found. So even after surveys, members of the species could not have been found in the world. For example, dinosaurs are one such species. So the recent species which have extinct are dodo and Steller's sea cow are the recent species which have become extinct. So usually small animals are much more in the verge of extinction than the bigger animals. So at times we kill snakes, frogs, lizards ruthlessly without realizing their importance in the ecosystem. So by killing them, we are harming ourselves. They might be small in size, but their role in the ecosystem cannot be ignored. They play an important part of this multiple food chains and food webs. The next classification is critically endangered species. That is, the species which are facing high risk of extinction in the immediate future. In the immediate future. For example, the thick-billed parrot, black rhino are some of the examples. So the next category is endangered species. So species which face high risk of extinction in the near future. So the critically endangered have in the immediate future, but the endangered have high risk in the near future. So it may be due to drastic changes in their habitat, climatic changes, or pressure from the invasive species. For example, golden mole. The next category is the vulnerable species. Species which are not critically endangered or are endangered but face high risk of extinction in the medium term future. These are called vulnerable species. For example, elephant, giant panda, hippopotamus are some examples. With this, we have completed the classification. So species, what are species? So species are the group of individuals which are capable of interbreeding. This means that the member of the species can produce fertile offspring only with the member of their own species and not with the members of other species. Members of a species have common characteristics members of a particular species have common characteristics. IUCN has prepared a book list that contains the record of all the threatened species of plants and animals. This is called the Red Data Book, which is also called Red List. So there are different red data books for plants and animals. The aim of this book is to impact or impart information about the urgency and the scale of various conservation problems, not only to the public but also to the policy makers. Next, we are going to study about forest and wildlife loss. So in addition to the developing protected area, some important measures for wildlife conservation are: the first one is introduction of successful captivity breeding programs and public awareness programs, and the third one is effective legislation. So these are the important measures for wildlife conservation. So strict measures have been taken to stop illegal trade of wildlife, but it still continues to happen. So the Constitution of India provides legal provisions to safeguard the natural resources. Some of the important forest and wildlife laws. The first one is the Indian Forest Act 1927. It was enacted to protect the forests from destruction. Next is the Wildlife Protection Act, that is 1972. So it was enacted to protect the wildlife or the wild animals, plants and birds, and it was amended in 1991. The next is Forest Conservation Act 1980. It aims at preservation and conservation of natural forests and meeting the basic needs of people living near or living in the forests. The next one is National Forest Policy 1988. It was framed to ensure stability and balance of environment. It recommended 67% of forest cover in the hills and 33% of forest cover in the plains. 67% in the hills and 33% in the plains. So next we are going to study about migration. So migration refers to the regular, periodic or systematic movement of a group of organisms in search of food, shelter, etc. from one place to another. So migration refers to regular, periodic and systemic movement of a group of organisms in search of food, shelter or anything else from one place to another. So it can be also defined as a two-way journey undertaken by animal groups between two different habitats in a specific seasons, and this journey could be for food or for mating or to avoid any harsh climatic conditions. So many animals, particularly birds, undertake the long distance migrations to more comfortable areas. So these animals then return to their homes when the climatic conditions become favorable. So birds who cover long areas to reach another land are called the migratory birds. So these birds fly to far away areas every year during a particular time because of the climatic changes. They fly for laying eggs as the weather in their natural habitat becomes very cold and inhospitable. Siberian cranes that come to Bharatpur, Rajasthan are a very good example for such migratory birds. They come to India in order to avoid the harsh winters of Siberia. With this we have completed migration. Now we'll move to recycling of paper. So it takes about 17 full grown trees to make about 1 ton of paper. Hence, we should save paper in order to save trees. So paper should not only be used very carefully but should also be recycled. So this recycling not only saves trees but it also saves energy and water needed for manufacturing paper. Further, the harmful chemicals which are used in paper making will also be reduced. So recycling of paper as well as judicial use of paper should be encouraged at all levels. So if we save one sheet of paper a day, we can save many trees in a year. So paper can be recycled 5 to 6 times after use. Therefore, save trees, we should save, reuse and recycle the paper. Next, reforestation. The opposite of deforestation is reforestation. So logically speaking, the answer to deforestation is obviously reforestation, that is plant new trees. So in other words, reforestation is restocking of the damaged forests by planting new trees. So ideally, the planted trees should be of the same species as we found in the forest. Since nature has tremendous powers of restoration, if it is left without any interference, a deforested area may even re-establish itself. So, in such natural reforestations, there is no role of human beings. Reforestation should also be brought about by government agencies. So, the public interest and awareness can also help in tackling various conservation issues. We should plant at least as many trees as we cut, and we have to retain our green wealth for future generations. Plantation of many trees is the only option.